There comes a moment when silence stops being neutral. At first, silence may feel like safety. It feels like avoiding conflict, protecting peace, or waiting for the right time. But over time, silence begins to take a different shape. It becomes acceptance. It becomes permission. When injustice is allowed to exist without challenge, silence no longer means calm, it means complicity. Many people stay quiet not because they agree with what is wrong, but because they are afraid. Afraid of losing comfort, status, or security. Afraid of standing alone. Afraid of becoming a target. Fear is powerful, and systems built on injustice depend on it. They survive because good people convince themselves that staying silent is the wiser choice. But history shows that injustice grows strongest in quiet spaces. Silence sends a message, even when no words are spoken. It tells the oppressed that their pain is invisible. It tells the oppressor that their actions are tolerated. It creates a dangerous illusion that what is happening is normal, or at least unavoidable. Over time, people begin to adjust to unfairness, lowering their expectations and numbing their conscience. This is how wrong becomes routine. Breaking silence is rarely easy. Speaking up invites resistance. It can bring criticism, isolation, or punishment. But silence has its own cost, a slow erosion of dignity and moral clarity. When people repeatedly ignore what they know is wrong, they begin to lose a part of themselves. The voice inside that once questioned injustice grows weaker, and indifference takes its place. True progress has never been born from comfort. It emerges when someone decides that their conscience matters more than their convenience. One voice may seem small, but it has power. When a single person dares to speak the truth, it disrupts the quiet that protects injustice. It reminds others that silence is a choice, and that a different choice is possible. Silence also delays healing. Injustice does not disappear when ignored. It deepens. Wounds left unspoken do not close, they spread. Only when truth is acknowledged can healing begin. Speaking out is not about creating chaos. It is about restoring balance. It is about naming what is wrong so that it can finally be made right. Every generation faces this test. The question is never whether injustice exists, but whether people will challenge it. Waiting for someone else to speak first is another form of silence. Change begins the moment an individual decides that remaining quiet is no longer an option. There is power in saying, "This is wrong." There is courage in refusing to look away. When silence is broken, fear loses its grip and hope finds its voice. That moment, when silence ends, is where real change truly begins. Courage is often misunderstood. Many people believe courage means having no fear, but that has never been true. Fear is a natural human response. The real difference is what a person chooses to do while fear is present. Courage is not about feeling brave. It is about acting despite discomfort, risk, and uncertainty. It is the decision to value what is right more than what is easy. Comfort is tempting. It promises safety, routine, and acceptance. It whispers that change can wait, that speaking up is unnecessary, and that staying quiet will protect peace. But comfort can slowly become a trap. When comfort is prioritized above principles, people begin to tolerate things they once knew were wrong. Over time, the line between right and wrong becomes blurred, not because truth has changed, but because courage has faded. Every meaningful stand in history required someone to step out of comfort. Comfort avoids conflict. Courage confronts it. Comfort seeks approval. Courage seeks truth. Choosing courage means accepting that not everyone will agree, applaud, or understand. It means being willing to stand alone if necessary, knowing that integrity matters more than popularity. Fear often exaggerates consequences. It convinces people that speaking up will destroy everything they have. But more often than not, fear protects systems that depend on silence. Courage exposes those systems. It challenges the idea that safety is more important than justice. In reality, there is no true safety in surrendering values, because a life lived without principles slowly loses meaning. Courage also inspires others. When one person chooses to act bravely, it sends a powerful signal change is possible. Fear is contagious, but so is courage. A single act of bravery can break the illusion that everyone agrees with injustice. It creates space for others to step forward, to speak honestly, and to rediscover their own strength. Choosing courage does not guarantee immediate victory. It may bring setbacks, criticism, or sacrifice, but it brings something far more valuable: self-respect. A person who chooses courage over comfort can look in the mirror without regret. They know they did not trade their conscience for convenience. Comfort asks, "What will happen to me?" Courage asks, "What will happen if I do nothing?" That question changes everything. It shifts focus from personal ease to collective responsibility. It reminds us that progress depends on those willing to risk comfort so others can live with dignity. In the end, courage is a choice made again and again, not once, but daily. A choice to speak when silence is easier. A choice to act when waiting feels safer. A choice to stand firm when retreat would be more comfortable. History remembers those choices because they are the moments when the world begins to move forward. Power is often mistaken for force. Many believe that strength comes from dominance, weapons, or the ability to control others. But history has proven again and again that force can silence voices, not erase truth. Physical power may create fear, but it can never create lasting change. True transformation is driven by something far stronger: moral strength. Moral strength begins with clarity. It is the ability to clearly recognize right from wrong, even when society tries to blur the line. It does not depend on approval, popularity, or numbers. A morally strong person does not ask what is convenient, they ask what is just. This clarity becomes a compass in moments of pressure, guiding actions when emotions run high and fear demands retreat. Violence may achieve short-term results, but it always leaves deep scars. It replaces one injustice with another and teaches the next generation that power comes from harm. Moral strength, on the other hand, breaks this cycle. It refuses to mirror the cruelty it opposes. It chooses discipline over rage and purpose over revenge. This restraint is not weakness. It is control at the highest level. One of the most powerful qualities of moral strength is consistency. It does not change with circumstances. It does not excuse injustice when it benefits one side and condemn it when it benefits another. This consistency builds trust. People may disagree, but they cannot easily dismiss someone who stands firmly on principle without contradiction. Moral strength also has a unique ability to expose injustice. When cruelty is met with dignity, it becomes uncomfortable to defend. When lies are met with truth, they begin to collapse. Injustice depends on confusion, fear, and silence. Moral strength removes all three. It shines a light so bright that denial becomes impossible. Another defining trait of moral strength is its ability to unite. Physical power divides us versus them, winner versus loser. Moral strength speaks to shared humanity. It reminds people that justice is not about defeating others, but about restoring fairness. This message reaches beyond borders, cultures, and generations, turning isolated struggles into collective movements. Choosing moral strength requires patience. Results may not be immediate. Progress may feel slow. But moral strength has endurance. It outlasts regimes, survives oppression, and continues long after physical power has collapsed. History rarely remembers those who ruled by force, but it never forgets those who stood by principle. In the end, moral strength is the kind of power that cannot be taken away. It cannot be imprisoned, silenced, or destroyed. It lives in conviction, discipline, and truth. And when the world finally changes, it is almost always because moral strength proved greater than physical power. Doing nothing often feels harmless. It feels safe, neutral, and reasonable. People tell themselves that staying quiet avoids trouble and keeps life stable. But in reality, inaction is never neutral. When injustice exists, choosing not to act is still a choice, and it almost always benefits the wrong side. The cost of doing nothing is quiet at first, but over time it becomes devastating. Inaction allows injustice to grow comfortable. When unfair systems face no resistance, they begin to see themselves as permanent. Silence becomes approval, and delay becomes a strategy to exhaust those who suffer. What starts as a small wrong slowly expands, because nothing stands in its way. History shows that oppression rarely arrives all at once. It grows in stages, protected by indifference. Many people avoid action because they fear consequences. They imagine loss, backlash, or failure. But what is often ignored is the consequence of waiting. Each day of inaction strengthens injustice and weakens resistance. The longer people wait, the harder change becomes. What could have been challenged early now requires greater sacrifice to undo. Inaction also damages the human spirit. Watching injustice without responding creates internal conflict. People know something is wrong, yet feel powerless or unwilling to act. Over time, this conflict turns into guilt, frustration, and emotional exhaustion. The mind learns to justify silence, and the heart slowly grows numb. This is how societies lose empathy, not suddenly, but gradually. Action, even when imperfect, interrupts this cycle. It sends a message that injustice will not go unchallenged. Action does not always mean grand gestures or dramatic sacrifice. Sometimes it begins with a voice, a choice, or a refusal to cooperate with what is wrong. Small actions create cracks in strong systems, and through those cracks, change begins to enter. The fear of action often exaggerates risks while ignoring rewards. Standing up builds confidence, restores self-respect, and reconnects people with their values. It replaces helplessness with purpose. Even when outcomes are uncertain, action brings clarity. It answers the painful question of regret by ensuring that silence was not chosen. Every major shift in history came because someone decided that waiting was no longer acceptable. They understood that neutrality in the face of injustice is not peace, it is surrender. They accepted that action carries a price, but inaction charges interest over time. The real question is not whether action is risky. The real question is whether a society can afford the long-term cost of doing nothing. Freedom, dignity, and justice are never lost overnight. They are lost when people repeatedly decide that acting is too inconvenient. Change begins when people realize that the price of silence is far greater than the price of standing up. Every major movement begins long before crowds gather or history takes notice. It begins with a single individual who refuses to accept unfairness as normal. That first voice often feels small, isolated, and uncertain, yet it carries extraordinary power. Change does not require permission from the majority.